Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2024 Cognizant Classic Data Dive Show. We got a lot to get into, and quite frankly, I just want to get right into it. So let's not delay it any at all. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best golf analytics tool out there for your money. Don't get me wrong, there are plenty of great golf analytics tools out there. I simply believe FantasyNational.com is the best. So go check out FantasyNational.com. You will not regret it. In the description to the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where I posted some research earlier today around the previous 8 winners of what used to be known as the Honda Classic here at PGA National. Not a whole lot of a pattern to establish, as I mentioned in the research. So if you're interested in what the pattern is or the players who qualify this week under those criteria, then give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and my top usage DFS in DFS. So if you want to see those 2 pieces of information, give me a follow over at X as well. And then lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle is in the description. He writes a very good article called The Fringe. It's a great way to start your week of preparation, and then throughout the week he will send you his own version of course history, recent form in his own format. So it's a great read. I can't recommend it enough. We both didn't do so well last week, but 2 weeks ago with my Hideki Matsuyama outright hit and his DFS huge weekend, you're really missing out if you're not following Gabe and subscribing to that article, because if you are a subscriber to that article, you're going to be able to join us every Wednesday night in his Substack chat after Calls and the DFS Tactics show. He is gracious enough to host me over there as we continue the DFS talk in his Substack chat. So make sure you are subscribed to that article and following him over on social media. And lastly, we're live. Chat's open. Again, if you weren't able to watch the show live last night or haven't been able to reach out to me via the comments or social media, if you had success at the Mexico Open, then feel free to put that in chat. Would love to be able to shout out more members of the community who had success beyond Dave and Micah from last night. And then moving to the Cognizant, did you make any wagers when the odds boards came out this morning? What players are you focused on early on in your DFS lineups? What do you think plays well here? What doesn't? All that. So let's dig into the weeds of the data for the 2024 Cognizant Classic. And we're going to start, as we traditionally do on a Monday evening, over at Windfinder. Now, Super Forecast is a little bit too far in advance, but we can take a look at the regular forecast some 72 hours out from the tournament in Palm Beach Gardens. And Thursday looks somewhat calm. Maybe some wind picking up in the afternoon, which you would expect generally happens at most tournaments. But Friday and Saturday looks like quite a bit of wind, and that is going to just amplify the difficulty that PGA National presents the players every day if the wind indeed is picked up. And then Sunday looks like some rain possibly in the forecast. Of course, once we get to Wednesday evening, we'll want to keep an eye on that. But as of right now, too early to say if we would be wanting to look at a particular half of the draw of a focus. But we're definitely going to want to be looking at some wind metrics this evening. So speaking of that, let's go ahead and move to Fantasy National. And you see that we have in the past, let's go ahead and go to 2 years, and or 36 rounds in moderate or windy conditions. Our top performers in the field this week: Rory McIlroy, Corey Connors, Denny McCarthy, Matt Fitzpatrick, Ricky Fowler, Harry Hall, Justin Rose, Ben On, Sung Jae, and Carson Young. There's been one more field change that I have seen from today in terms of players not playing. It is Vincent Whaley. So last night, Ches Reavie and Mackenzie Hughes had withdrawn from playing the Cognizant this week. And then today, Vincent Whaley withdrew. There have been a couple of sponsors exemptions. I believe Chris Goddard is one of them. The other one is escaping me at the moment. But if you want to be filled in on all of the latest field changes on the PGA Tour, then go follow Rob Bolton over on Twitter or X, as he is the one that gives all the updates in terms of field changes. So there's a look at our top 10 in terms of wind. We can continue on down maybe a little bit. Chris Kirk, your defending champion here. Andrew Novak, Adam Schenk, Shane Lowry, Kevin Yu, and so on down. There's your top players in moderate and windy conditions the past 2 years or 36 rounds. The other end of the spectrum, players who have not played well: Robert Garrigus, Carl Yuan, Kevin Kisner, Ryan Brim, Harrison Endicott, Eric Van Rooyen, surprisingly, at least in my mind, surprisingly that he has not played well in the wind, considering he generally plays pretty darn well in windy conditions. I guess it's the moderate that's holding him back. J.B. Holmes, Tom Hoagie, Matthias Schmid, so on down the list there. You can see players who have not played well in moderate and windy conditions. All right, we've got a couple of things beyond the wind that we can look at. With the wind forecast the way it is, I do think it's still going to play difficult this week. Even though the par 4 10th has been converted to a par 5, that'll ease the difficulty some. With the amount of wind, at least in the forecast this far out, I still think this course is going to show its teeth. It's only that one hole that got changed. There are plenty of holes at PGA National that are extremely difficult. More than a third of a shot over par. The par 4 6th, quarter of a shot, 2/10, quarter of a shot, 2/10. There's plenty of holes here that are difficult. So I still think, even with the conversion, with the amount of wind that is in the forecast this early in the week, we're going to look at some difficult scoring relative to par. So in rounds that are difficult to par, our top performers: Rory, Matt Fitzpatrick, Tom Kim, Denny McCarthy, Ricky Fowler, Justin Rose, Thomas Dietrich, Justin Suh, Sung Jae, and Shane Lowry. So a lot of overlap here between wind and difficult. Of course, Rory number one in both. Matt Fitzpatrick was up there, very high on both lists. I believe Sung Jae and Shane Lowry were high, both lists. Now Adam Schenk, not quite top 10, in difficult, but he was for the wind. So quite a bit of overlap here with these players in the top 10s. And then moving on down a little bit, Minwoo Lee, Brendan Todd, Gary Woodland, Adam Schenk, Austin Eckroat, and so on down there, your top performers when rounds are difficult. Tony, thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Good to see you this evening. My boy Denny about to ball out this week. I don't hate that. And that's why we go pretty deep into the data, especially on a Monday evening when we take a look. Hopefully it out. I apologize for any buffering or anything that's going on. It's kind of out of my control with OBS. Actually, I take that back. I might be able to close out something that might be causing it a little bit, so we'll see if that helps. The other end of the spectrum, players who have not played well when rounds have been difficult. Past couple of years, Nico Echeverria. Hey P, good to see you. I'll catch up with you here in a second, but your bottom performers or your worst performers when rounds are difficult: Nico Echeverria, Ryan Brim, Kevin Kisner, Eric Van Rooyen, Camilo Villegas, Harrison Endicott, Paul Barjon, Peter Malnati, Garrett Higo, so on down. Hopefully you had a good Mexico Open, at least better than mine. All is well, and that you are ready for what used to be known as the Honda Classic, now called the Cognizant. And don't mind me, I'm going to pop a cough drop because I can feel my voice getting scratchy already. But anyway, there's a look at your top performers when rounds are difficult. The only other kind of filter we can look at is perhaps on short courses. I don't love using that filter with the length or lengthening of the par now 5 10th, but the course still measures right at 7,150 yards. So your top performers on courses that are short, defined as under 7,200 yards: Eric Cole, Russell Henley, JT Poston, Taylor Montgomery, Ben On, Denny McCarthy, Minwoo Lee, Sung Jae, Chris Kirk, Rio Hitsatsune. Made one Mexico lineup and it was 2 of 6. Glad that's all I did. Yeah. My DFS wasn't an abject failure. It wasn't great by any means. It's certainly a losing proposition. I had enough Stefan Jaeger, who finished in the top 5 or top 3, that kind of buoyed a lot of the lineups that were 5 of 6 and 4 of 6. I only had one 6 of 6 lineup out of the 25 that I generally play. So it wasn't a great week by any means. It was especially disappointing coming off the fantastic Genesis from 2 weeks ago. So we're going to see if we can't turn that around. I lost a 6 golfer parlay T20. I hit 5 out of 6. Griot got me. So Griot was one person that I full faded last week. That was one of a few players that I got right. I was nowhere near Griot. I did not like his form coming in. Did not see the course fit. Now, he played very well for the first 2 or 2.5 days. But I lost all my parlays. Harry Hall killed me on one. He played really, really well on Sunday. He did not play well on Saturday. It figures that I had Sami Valimaki, Harry Hall, and I think it was Stefan Jaeger in a top 10, 20, 30, or 10, 20, 40 parlay. And Harry Hall killed me on that. So I won't always be right, and I will take full credit whenever I'm wrong. I was very, very high on Nate Lashley last week. That turned out to bite me. But that is one player that I did get right. But anyway, here's our top performers on short courses. Of course, Eric Cole, Russell Henley has had lots of success here at PGA National. Denny McCarthy makes a lot of sense, as we were talking about a little bit earlier. Tony, Sung Jae, massive amounts of success here. The other end of the spectrum, players that have not played well when courses are short, again defined as 7,200 yards or less. Tyson Alexander, Ben Taylor, Cameron Champ, somebody I was extremely high on last week. This does not feel like a good fit for Cam Champ. Ryan Brim, seemingly been at the bottom 10 on all of these. Snedeker, Matt Wallace, Nico Echeverria, Chad Ramey, Vincent Norman, Vajegas, so on down the list there. Sammy came through. Yeah, I did not use nearly enough of Sami Valimaki. I mentioned him. I was much higher on others in the 6Ks, but I certainly liked him enough to mention him. And I had him in one lineup. Again, that lineup was saved by Sammy to min cash or maybe just a little bit more. But I wasn't nearly as high on him as others that I had seen, floating around in Xverse, Twitterverse, or whatever. I'll be about 20 minutes from the tourney this week in Florida. Not be going to it. Well, that's a shame. But enjoy your time in Florida. If you're not having to plead the fifth, what are you going to be doing down there, P? I hope you have safe travels and enjoy your time in Florida. All right. I don't know how much my voice is going to stay in tonight. So let's go ahead and run through these prior leaderboards, figure out the metrics that we want to focus on this week for the Honda and perhaps the players that will or that are best at those metrics. Good evening, Darnell. Really appreciate you jumping in chat. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Hopefully you had a good Mexico Open. But I believe we caught up a little bit. It wasn't great, so we're going to try to get back on the winning ways like we were 2 weeks ago at the Genesis. But appreciate you jumping in chat, and let's try to turn our fortunes around. Playing golf better than watching, absolutely. Golfing with a buddy at the Country Club of Florida, that's awesome. I got out today, first round of the new year. It actually went pretty well. So I was pleasantly surprised with how well I played, which means everything else golf related, at least me playing golf in 2024, is just all downhill. Had Nap, was able to cash. Good deal. I had him in one lineup, and that's kind of the story of my DFS last week. I had one lineup with Valimaki, one lineup with Jake Knapp, a lot of Stefan Jaeger. If you were here last week, you knew how high I was on him, so he was able to salvage some min cashes, but certainly a losing proposition last week for me. All right, let's cover these prior leaderboards. We talked quite a bit last night how much ball striking matters, especially strokes gain approach. Looking at, just the top 20 here, couple of players getting cut off at the bottom of your screen. Only one player negative in strokes gain approach in the top 20 last year for the Honda. That tells you everything you need to know, and we got some big numbers in here: 7, 7.5, 6.5, 7.5. Lots of big numbers. Now off the tee is a little bit more correlating than I would have thought. Only really one horrendous performance in off the tee. If we sort on these, you have your cut making here with some elite performances mixed in, 3rd, 5th, 5th, but more so your cut making. Whereas if we look at approach, a 60th from Kyle Stanley, that's fair, that's pretty poor. Top 15, a top 5, a top 5, the winner, top 10, top 5, much more correlating in strokes gain approach. 60 something degrees. Yeah, it was 75 here in essentially Louisville, Kentucky. I'm in the suburb of it, but it was beautiful, and we took advantage of it. Around the green, this is one where I don't know how to approach this week. I'll just be honest with you as the viewer. Scrambling, I think, is going to be somewhat important, but I don't know if that's necessarily going to be around the green, because there is plenty of water in play off the tee. So that, by definition, is going to force the player to be scrambling if they find the water off the tee. And when we go to Microsoft Excel later, scrambling was not very predictive, at least in terms of last year's Honda Classic. So we're gonna have to figure out what we want to do with around the green. It makes a lot of sense that it would come into play if this course is difficult. Even though these greens are large, they're very difficult to hit. But there isn't a whole lot of correlation here. I mean, your leader in around the green missed the cut, a 71st and a 60th, 49th. This is not great correlation. And then putting, solid, but you still have some pretty poor performances up here from solid putters. Anders Albertson, Trevor Werblio down there at 49th. Decent, so we'll be definitely looking at some putting, but clearly last year it was about the irons. And then just very, very quickly, we'll cover 2022 as well, and Sepp Straka's win. Looking at the top 15, not a single player negative in terms of approach. I just think it's going to be a major factor this week. Now, putting was a big factor in 2022. Only one player negative, pretty poor putting that week. But if we sort on these, a 5, which led, it's always important to note that your leader in a category was the winner of a tournament, so you can't ignore that. But that's only a 5 from Sepp Straka in terms of off the tee. Decent amounts of correlation. Approach, you got a 9, 7, 7, 6, almost 6.5. Just pretty good correlation, other than Justin Lauer, obviously. Around the green, not too much. You got a couple high miss cuts up here, some 40th place finishes, and then putting, okay, decent, but nothing astronomical. So I'm a little torn about around the green. We'll definitely look at it. I'm definitely torn on off the tee. Just don't know how much off the tee is going to matter this week. And feel free to jump in the comments or chat, if you disagree, or in the comments if you're not able to watch the show live. But we're definitely going to be looking at strokes gain approach. So let me remove all the filters in the last 12 months or 36 rounds, whichever happens first. Our top Strokes gained approach players in the field this week: Lucas Glover, Sam Ryder, Eric Cole, Tom Hoagie, Chris Kirk, Justin Lauer, Ryan Moore, Doug Gim, Matthew Pavone, and Corey Connors. Looking at a little bit around the green, I think I'm going to more so be focused on scrambling, but your top around the green players: Patty Harrington. There's a name for you. Patty Harrington, Troy Merritt, Aaron Baddeley, S.H. Kim, Russell Henley, Stephen Yeager, Brendan Todd, C.T. Pan, Ricky Fowler, and Sam Stevens. Big misses are going into the water. You are correct with that. But a lot of players are going to have to be clubbing down anyway, so they're not going to be hitting driver. That's why I am not overly confident how much off the tee is going to matter. Because there's a lot of forced layups, a lot of severe dog legs at PGA National. So players are hitting 3 woods, 5 woods, maybe even driving irons as opposed to driver. If this was a driver course, then I would agree with you, Darnell. I think off the tee would be a major factor. Think of somewhere like Phoenix, Genesis. But with the amount of forced layups here, I have my doubts how much off the tee is really going to play a big factor. It'll be a factor. I don't know how much of a big factor. There's our top around the green players. And then lastly, let me grab the courses that have true TIFF Eagle Bermuda. So the first being Bay Hill, where we are next week for the Arnold Palmer Invitational. The Plantation course at Kapalua, of course, PGA National, where we are this week. Plantation course, TIFF Eagle Bermuda. Port Royal. Now, we won't get any putting data from Port Royal. That is the host of the Butterfield Bermuda. But I still will grab that data. And then lastly, Sea Island, the host of the RSM. Let's apply those course filters and take a look at who has putt the best on pure or true TIFF Eagle Bermuda. So in the past 2 years, your top performers on TIFF Eagle Bermuda: Bo Hostler, Eric Cole, Tyler Duncan, Taylor Montgomery, Ben Taylor, Chesson Hadley, Chris Kirk, Matt Fitzpatrick, Johnny Vegas, and Alex Noren. Again, skipping Mackenzie Hughes. He is withdrawn from the tournament. So again, just to recap, in the strokes gained page view, we're going to do a lot in approach. We'll have some in putting, especially around TIFF Eagle Bermuda. And then kind of open to debate or open to discussion on off the tee and around the green. I can see scrambling being more important. To your point, Darnell, misses off the tee, you're going to find water, and those players are going to be scrambling from there, and they're not necessarily around the green. And because of the forced layup nature of some of the holes, I don't know how much off the tee is going to be gained either. More so probably accuracy, like fairways gained. That would be my guess. So, all right, let's get this prepped for the fairways and greens. Take a look at last year. Distance, just absolutely not a factor. You see all the players that are negative in terms of driving distance in relation to the field. It is just not important here at PGA National. And fairways, like Chris Kirk and Eric Cole, they were slightly positive, but they weren't astronomical in terms of fairways gained. And, we're 1 and 2. Really seeing how much, or lack thereof, how much off the tee comes into play, or at least last year. Now, having said that, only 3 players in the top 20 were negative in fairways gained. But what I mentioned last night, only 2 players were negative in good drives gained. And I think that's the metric that I'm thinking we're going to be wanting to look at, because a good drive gained, per Fantasy National's definition, is a drive that hits the fairway, or the player is hitting the green in regulation if they're not in the fairway. So, and you see the greens, only 2 players, negative 0.5 over the course of a tournament, pretty much field average. So if we sort Okay, more correlating than I thought. You had a 60th from Kyle Stanley isn't good, but 5th, 3rd, 5th, 12th, 5th, 14th. You can't argue that. That's pretty darn strong. Your winner just wasn't up here with it, but much more correlating than I thought. Good drives, a lot of the same. 5th, 5th, 3rd, 5th. Some missed cuts a little bit further down. Then greens. Yeah, this is where I'm kind of leaning. 5th, 5th, 5th. Your winner was pretty high up here. Greens gained. If we look at 2022 in the top 15, just convenient for ties and whatnot. Only 2 players negative in good drives gained. Many more players were negative in fairways. Only 2 players negative in greens. So good drives, other than Alex Smalley, which he just generally is a green and regulation machine. Sepp Straka, Brian Stewart, 1st, 9th, 2nd, 3rd, 9th, top 20, top 5s right below him. Pretty strong there in the good drives gained. Greens, oh gosh. Again, Alex Smalley, he's just a green and regulation player. 1st, 5th, 9th, 2nd, 3rd, 4th. A couple of, middling to clunkers, depending on your definition. 5th, 7th. That's very strong. So I'm thinking good drives gained and or greens in regulation. But what we want to think about is, do we want to look at any filter with that? Do we want to look at scoring difficult to par? Do we want to look at that on short courses? Do we want to look at that in the wind? I would tend to lean towards scoring difficult in this regard. So your top good drives gained players when rounds are difficult: Tom Kim, Matthew Neesmith. In fact, if I bring this into the last year, sorry. Wanted to see if we had enough rounds. They aren't. Not to make it statistically significant. So again, last 2 years, our top greens in our top good drives gained players when rounds are difficult: Tom Kim, Matthew Neesmith, Brendan Todd, Shane Lowry, Kevin Showman, Doug Gim, Russell Henley, Nate Lashley, Ben Martin, and Lucas Glover. Most of these players are going to be pretty high up in greens as well. You see Tom Kim 4th, Lowry 6th, which I know you and I go back and forth on Lowry quite a bit, Darnell. I gotta say, I do like him here at the Honda, or at the Cognizant now, at PGA National. This does feel like a very good Shane Lowry fit, and he has played well here in the past 5 years. If we just very quickly look at tournament history, he's one of the top strokes gained total leaders here. In fact, 2nd, and only doing it 4 years. So Lowry is somebody that's going to be pretty high this week for me, Darnell. And I know you and I have went back and forth on him a few times, which, that's why we love playing this game, because we see things different. I do like Lowry quite a bit. And several players that would get honorable mentions, Doug Gim 6th and 12th, Henley 6th and 15th, Lashley 6th and 11th. Your top greens gained players when rounds are difficult: Alex Smalley, Gary Woodland, Rory, Tom Kim, Tom Hoagie, Shane Lowry, C.T. Pan, Corey Connors, Lee Hodges, and Luke List. So you see the majority of these players are still very, very good in good drives gained and hitting plenty of greens. So I'm going to be either using one or both of these. Just not sure which. I'm really just not sure which. And then, of course, we can look at scrambling as well. Scrambling is going to be a big thing here at PGA National. So your top scramblers when rounds are difficult in the past 2 years: Denny McCarthy, to your point, Tony, earlier; Brendan Todd, Taylor Montgomery, Matt Fitzpatrick, Matt Kuchar, Andrew Novak, Chris Kirk, Sung Jae, Christian Bezuidenhout, and Daniel Berger, to your point there, Darnell. Just a little bit of foreshadowing for your information. I used scrambling when it's difficult, and it was not very predictive last year, so we might look at scrambling in a different context. Scrambling on short courses maybe. Ben Silverman, Martin Laird, Eric Cole, Ben Griffin, McNeely, Taylor Montgomery, Kuchar, Denny McCarthy, and Malnati. Interesting. But I'm really kind of scared of doing scrambling and difficult since it was so bad last year in terms of predictability. But maybe it was just a bad year. Maybe it was an outlier year. Don't know. All right, let's move to scoring. And this one's going to be pretty darn easy. Although I do want to see the double bogey avoidance as well. So, looking at last year, top 20, majority of the players, you're going to be positive in birdies and bogey avoidance. But if we sort on this double bogey avoidance, again, you just have a lot of 1.6s. There's nobody that's really taking full advantage of the double bogey avoidance, if that makes sense. So if we had some other values, up here at the top, I might think about it, but it just doesn't seem like double bogey avoidance is a huge factor when you sort on the leaderboard. Instead, a couple of good performances or decent performances, and then first, second, third, fifth, 14th, fifth. So birdies gained, pretty solid. Bogey avoidance. I'm going to tell you right now, this is a little bit of an outlier because birdies gained were a little bit more important last year than bogeys avoided. You got 4 pretty middling to clunker finishes, and then the elite performance. If we go to 2022, and I'll get to that thought here in a second, Tony. If we go to 2022, we'll see that last year was definitely an outlier. If we look at the top 15, many more players, actually just one more player, positive in bogey avoidance, but some of these numbers, almost 8 or 7.5, 7.5. Look at the contrast between Alex Noren. He didn't gain hardly any birdies, but still top 5 due to his prowess at avoiding bogeys 2 years ago here at PGA National. Same with Matthias Schwab. So if we sort, again, solid, definitely solid up here, but you can't really argue against that. 5th, 2nd, 1st, 4th, 7th, 5th. 30th and 25th, nothing to scoff at either. Pavone top 20. I tell you what, these DP World Tour players, I am generally not the best at handicapping because I don't pay attention to the DP World Tour. I only look at stats from the PGA Tour. So, I'm usually pretty lower or pretty low on DP World Tour guys. My concern with Pavone, you see here, and it's a very small sample size, he's not actually played well when it's difficult. The Farmers this year wasn't extremely difficult. Normally the Farmers is, really darn difficult. With all the rain they had in Southern California, made it soft, and it was pretty receptive. And you see it was more of an average difficulty tournament. I know everyone thinks Farmers, they think difficult, and they should. Very good on Bermuda. Again, just small sample size. Sony, very good. American Express, very good. It's not unreasonable, but I can't imagine it'd be good odds either. I don't know if I'd be willing to put that wager in on its own. This might be in a parlay type deal. I mean, you can't argue with the form. 3rd, 1st, 39th, 7th. I mean, it's just amazing. I do have a little bit of concern, particularly around difficult, and I still think PGA National is going to be difficult. He hasn't been the best around the green, and around the green can be a factor here. Talked, throughout this evening, what we might or might not do with around the green. So definitely has the irons. I don't I don't like it by itself, but I think it's reasonable if you want to put it in a parlay. I think is where I'm at with that. It's always a beast of a course. Normally the winning score gets to the low double digits, 10, 12. I think the record is 14 under last year. This course is generally a bear. Now I can see it getting a little bit higher scoring or better scoring due to the conversion of the par 4 10th, but I still think this course is going to show its teeth. This is not an easy course. All right, so moving to scoring. This is just me as a statistician and me as a data analyst. I am always going to prefer matching a scoring metric like birdies or better, birdies gained, bogey avoidance, with a scoring filter, easy or difficult relative to par. So we're just going to go ahead and look at difficult relative to par. And the Eagles are essentially non-existent here. We can see that from the course breakdown from last night. Just absolutely non-existent here. So, our top, let me scroll all the way up. Our top birdies gained players when rounds have been difficult the past 2 years. Rory, Ricky, Justin Suh, Roger Sloan, Matt Fitzpatrick, Cam Young, Corey Connors, Sung Jae, Nate Lashley, and Callum Tarren. Our top bogey avoiders when rounds have been difficult. Matt Fitzpatrick, Rory, Alex Smalley, Brendan Todd, Lucas Glover, Tom Kim, Denny McCarthy, Eric Cole, Doug Gim, Matt Kuchar. As well as McCarthy has played, let me rephrase that. As well as his irons have gotten in recent tournaments, other than the Genesis, when players are going to have bad weeks. It's just going to happen. Golf's a crazy game. McCarthy's irons have generally gotten better. I think I like McCarthy top 20 more than Pavone if I had to think, if I had to choose one of the two, because Denny, again, I just don't know how much off the tee is going to matter. If you're thinking off the tee is going to be a pretty big factor, I'd be pretty wary of Denny, because you see the off the tee has been really bad lately. But the guy is an all-world putter. Generally is a par getter. You see how well he plays when it's difficult. I think I like Denny McCarthy more than Pavone in a top 20 instance, if they're in the same ballpark in terms of odds. I haven't looked that closely in terms of top 20 odds. I just fired off a couple of win wagers early this morning, or when they came out later this morning. But I think that's where I'm at with the two players you've asked about, Tony. At least on a Monday night, and I haven't made my mixed condition model. I'll be doing that in tomorrow into Wednesday, but I think that's where I'm at right now. So anyway, there is a look at your top birdies gained and bogey avoiders when rounds are difficult. I don't know if we're definitely going to have some bogey avoidance in the mixed condition model. But it was hard to ignore just how much the birdies gained both years was pretty darn correlating. So we might have a little bit of birdies gained too. All right, let's move to proximity. Just as a reminder, the most prevalent proximities here or approach shots come from 150 to 200, more so the 175 to 200, of course, anytime. And again, like I said, I will own when I'm wrong. I have no problem about that, but that's the way I see it. 72 hours or 60 hours, whatever we are from the start of the tournament. So let's see how or which, if any, of these proximities lead to upper echelon success here at PGA National. Well, right off the bat, kind of looks like the 150 to 175 was pretty darn strong last year. I mean, you had a really bad performance from Ryan Brim. But otherwise, some pretty big numbers in here for 150 to 175. 14th, 4th, Bryce Garnett, whatever. Bezadenhout was middling. A couple of top 15s. Your winner was fairly high. Like 150 to 175 looks pretty darn strong. For proximity standards, now the bottom half of the top 20 really tails off in 175 to 200, but look at the top 10 here in terms of 175 to 200. Only one player negative. He was horrendous at that range, but only one player negative. You had your cut making, followed, scattered in with some elite performances like Justin Sutton, Ben Taylor, but much more so, I'm seeing the 150 to 175 from last year. 2022 procs. Yeah, I mean, there was no correlation seemingly in 2022 regarding either of these ranges. My goodness, there's a lot of red in here. 200 plus actually looks somewhat strong if we sort on this. Yeah, there's not much here. I don't see. Not much here. Several miscuts very high. You see how prevalent the 200 plus was, or how correlating I should say, the 200 plus was in 2022. So this is why proximity is always my weakest analytic statistic in golf. It just doesn't make a lot of sense as a statistician. With that said, we'll take a look at proximity. I'm leaning towards the 150 to 175, but feel free to jump in chat if you want to see a specific range, but I'm leaning 150 to 175. Not a strong lean, but it might not actually make it into the mixed condition model at all. I think this is the range I'm looking at if I put proximity in. So your top proximity players from 150 to 175: Taylor Pendrith, Lucas Glover, Sam Ryder, Mark Hubbard, Scott Stallings, Doug Gim, Akshay Bhatia, Justin Lauer, Matthew Pavone, and Ben Martin. So that is one thing that Pavone has going for him. I think this might be the first list he has popped on, is this proximity. And that's about the only range that he would pop on. You see really bad from 175 to 2, really bad from 125 to 150. Granted, it's a lot smaller sample size than all of these other players, but small sample size data still is what it is. He's been very good at the 150 to 175 and good from really close 75 to 100, but not necessarily anywhere else. All right, let's get into the par 3s, 4s, and 5s just very quickly. We've been going for quite a while, and I still got a lot of stuff in Excel that I want to show you all. So, par 3s. Where they play. I think they're going to be pretty darn important. They are some of the hardest par 3s on the PGA Tour. Not necessarily long, but you think about the bear trap, 15, 16, 17, half of your par 3s, 15 and 17, fall in there. Overall, pretty solid last year. Nothing astronomical. You got a 5 from Shane Lowry, a couple of 4s. Chris Kirk, your winner, was a 3. So, cut making, other than Paul Haley and Doc Redman. Actually, that's not fair to these guys. This is pretty strong here. Trevor Cohn was a clunker. That's pretty strong there. And then Chris Kirk on down. Okay. If there's a range, it looks like the biggest numbers in the 175 to 200. 3.2. A 3. But look at that horrendous correlation. A whole lot of missed cuts. So the 150 to 175 didn't matter at all. 200 to 225. Yeah, only a 2. Cut making, but only a 2. Looks like it was just total par 3s last year. 2022. Now, Sepp Straka didn't play them astronomically well. He played them okay. Kitayama and Berger and Woodland played them exceptionally well. Much less correlating, for sure. If there's a range, I still think it's this one, 3.2. Yeah, I think it's the 175 to 2. Let's get this set for the par 4s. All right, our top par 3 performers in the field this week, just total par 3 performers: Carson Young, Austin Eckroat, Tom Hoagie, Alex Noren, Rory, Luke List, Padraig Harrington, Matthew Pavone, Grayson Sigg, and Chesson Hadley. Surprised to see Eric Cole fall all the way to 17th. Because he's generally very, very strong in par 3s. He must have been really bad. Yeah, he had a bad round. He's had a couple of, terrible rounds in par 3s lately. But he's generally a very good par 3 player. That's why he played really well here last year. 175 to 200. Tyson Alexander, there's a name for you. I don't know how crazy I'd give it that. Look at that. Okay, so look at that. It's just that's his range. He is hideous. Every other range, but by God, he plays this range well. Something, I guess. Luke List, Nico Echeverria, Chris Kirk, Brendan Wu, Goddard, Yeager, Novak, Coles, and Smalley. Let's move to par 4s. They're going to be a little bit less this year. Again, with the conversion of the par 4 10th to a par 5, you got one less par 4 now. So a little bit less, or at least a little bit mitigated in terms of importance, I would think. Looks like the 450 to 5 was at least the most correlating here, but not a single player negative in par 4s. Your winner led. They're still going to be very, very important. Still going to be very important. Big numbers in here. My goodness, 8.5, 6.5, 5.5 at a specific length of par 4s. That's pretty strong. Only one high miscut. 450 to 5. Fifth, third, fifth, 15 or top 15, winner 5th. That's strong. 2022 again. Just video game numbers on these par 4s from Shane Lowry. 2nd, 9th, 4th, 1st. 7.5, 6.5, 1 and 2 at the tournament. So 400, 450. A little bit less there. Interesting. It looks like both of those ranges are going to be something to look at. So total par 4 performance: Rory, Eric Cole, Ben On, Bo Hostler, Henley, Minwoo Lee, Poston, Bezadenhout, Glover, and Noren. In here, let's see, Rory, strong, Eric Cole, strong, Ben On, 6th in both of those ranges of par 4s. Bo Hostler's pretty strong. Henley's 1st and 30th. Noren, 22nd and 9th. Ben Silverman, 14th and 10th. Something to go on in par 4s, at least. Taylor Pendrith. Okay. And then lastly, you're just going to have to trust me on this. Par 5s, we're going to look at one particular range. It's 500 to 550 because you got the par 5 third at 538. You now have the converted par 4 at 525 or something to that effect. And then 556, you can easily imagine pins and tees being moved around, and that comes down under the 550 threshold. So we're just going to be looking at par 5s, 500 to 550. Kevin Yu, Johnny Vegas, Doug Gim, Tom Kim, Adam Schenk, Grazerman, Sam Ryder, Nick Dunlap, Michael Kim, and Ryan Palmer. All right. Roughly 10 minutes remaining. I'm sure we're going to go over a little bit, but let's take a look at some Microsoft Excel data. First off, let's see how my mixed condition model performed last year, what metrics and filters I used, and how predictive the model was. Right off the start, McCarthy a miscut, 2, 3. So I had 6 miscuts in the top 20. That's not great. I'm looking for 4 to 5, 20 to 25%. So a little bit on the heavier side. Did have the winner. He was very popular, but I did have the winner in my top 5. That is something. I had a very unique Eric Cole in my top 20. So I do want to give myself credit for that. Ben Taylor, I wouldn't say was extremely popular. 8.5% at least projected owned by the time we rolled around Wednesday night. So it was okay. I had some pretty good unique plays. McCarthy didn't pan out. Of course, I was really high on Callum Tarrant, who didn't pan out. Kuchar didn't pan out. But overall, it was okay, I suppose. what did I look at? I had 15% in approach. I think that's a little bit light. We're going to be going even heavier on that, I think. 15% in par 4s. Okay. 10% in bogey avoidance. Makes a lot of sense. Now, I did have 10% in the 175 to 200, whereas it looked like the 150 to 175 was the more correlating. So, we'll see. 10% in total par 3s. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. And 5% in the 175 to 200. So, pretty big emphasis in the par 3s, and I'm feeling that way again this year. The par 3s generally are just a pretty big deal around PGA National. I had 5% on Fast and Lightning Bermuda greens. Now that we have the sophistication, I'll say, to focus on just the courses that have Tiff Eagle Bermuda, that's what we're going to do. But these greens historically have been Fast or Lightning. This vision will be skewed. I apologize, but we'll bring up the historic conditions. No, you're not going to be able to see that, so I'll change it just very quickly. You see green speed, Fast. 2022 it was Lightning, Fast and Lightning. So they've sped up these greens over the years, especially recently. So I don't hate the idea of looking at Fast and Lightning Bermuda greens, but I'm just going to be looking at Tiff Eagle Bermuda now that we have that sophistication. So Bay Hill, Kapalua, PGA National, Port Royal, and Sea Island. So I had 5% in total putting, and I had 5% in 10 to 15 feet. And I vaguely remember telling my viewers last year that that we either solved the matrix or we went off the rails. I did have 5% in double avoidance, so we'll see how predictive that was. 5% in greens when it's difficult. This needs to rise. I think this is going to be much more important. 5% in sand saves. Now, Gabe made a really good point in his article that comes out every Sunday in his preparation for the week. He said, with all the water on the course, professionals are just conditioned to play away from the water. So the bailout areas are bunkers, essentially, around PGA National. So that's something to think about. I know we didn't look at sand saves this evening, but it's something to think about. I mentioned it a little bit earlier this evening, 5% scrambling. When it was difficult, that was not a very good metric, as we'll see. And then finally, 5% in the 400 to 450 par 4s. So how predictive were these? I'm generally looking for metrics that are in the 50s, low 50s, or even better. This just speaks to the volatility of PGA National with all the water on the course. 68, not great, but honestly, it's kind of half, midway in terms of performance. Par 4s were pretty good relative to the others. Bogey avoidance wasn't. Par 3s weren't. The best was these par 3s, 175 to 200, and the 10 to 15 feet. But it's still not crazy good into the sense that I think I want to use it again, but it was the best. And this is why I'm really, really hesitant on using scrambling when rounds are difficult, because it was just horrendous in terms of predictability. So, not sure what we're gonna garner from last year's mixed condition model, but we clearly have room for improvement. Considering we had 6 of the top 20 miss the cut, so room for lots of improvement, absolutely. But I do like several of these metrics in here. Definitely going to move some percentages around, that's for sure. Okay, close that out. Let's go to what I really like to do in a data dive show. Let's take a look at PGA National and really dig into the heavy metrics and the heavy numbers for PGA National. Now, Sunday nights, I compare the course against other full field courses on the PGA Tour. Monday nights, we just dig into the course by itself. You see, approach has been the biggest metric across the past 5 years, and we could probably remove this year from 5 years ago, and it's going to change it drastically because look how much the putting was that year and how little the approach was. But the approach has been pretty solid 4 years. We've had a couple of years where the around the green was solid, but look at the last 2 years. It kind of really didn't play all that much. Really didn't play all that much. Instead, it was off the tee. It really was. 3 times the importance here, or maybe even 4 times the importance last year. A little bit more than 3 times the importance in 2022. So perhaps I need to consider off the tee a little bit more here. Moving to driving and greens, none of these numbers really stand out. That's a pretty low number for greens, especially like if you look at the Genesis, it's more than a half a shot more important. Like the Arnold Palmer's 0.3 of a shot next week. The Players is much more important. So greens not really a big deal the last 5 years, surprisingly. Good drives gained. One massive year, but really kind of middling. So not sure what I'm going to do on this page view. I'm sure I'll have something from here, but I'm not sure. Looking at scoring, birdies and bogeys, again, as I mentioned, last year was a pretty big outlier when the birdies was a full shot more important. But look at every other year. Bogey avoidance more important. Bogey avoidance. Pretty darn close to even, but still lean bogey avoidance and bogey avoidance. So last year looks like it was a pretty big outlier. Still might consider putting 5% birdies gained when it's difficult. Because other than 2022, it's actually been a very consistent metric. It really has been. And as statisticians, we like consistency. Moving to the par 3s, 4s, and 5s, this is where we're really going to gain some advantage. See where the strokes gained come in these particular lengths. So look here. Almost one full shot out of a 1.55, so almost 2/3 of your strokes gained total in par 3s come from 175 to 200. Now they have fallen off a little bit in terms of importance, but so have the par 3s in general. So that's why we've been separating out the 175 to 200 tonight a little bit. I still think it's correct to do so. We'll be looking at all par 3s, but we're probably going to have 5% in 175 to 200. And the stats and the numbers just back that up to look at that range. Looking at the par 4s, a little bit different here. Now the 400 450 is almost a full shot more important than the next 2 highest, but 2 out of a 4.6, you're still not getting even 50% of your strokes gained total in a range. Looks like we're just going to be looking at strokes gained par 4 in general, in totality, no specific range. However, if there is a range, it is going to be the 400 to 450. Not sold that I'm going to do that, but that's the range that we would want to look at. And then lastly, in these par 5s, 80, gosh dang it, I went to the Fortinet. I apologize. Honda. 80, almost 88%. 0.8 out of 0.9. 88% of the strokes gained total, par 5s, here at the Cognizant at PGA National, come in this range of par 5s. So that's why we're just going to be looking at 500 to 550 throughout the week. That's why it's going to be the only range in the final mixed condition model come Wednesday night. 88% of your strokes gained total par 5s fall into this range. All right. With that, let's end the show off like we typically do. We're a little bit late or over on time, but I love the interaction. So if there are more questions, I'll stick around. I try to keep it under or at an hour, but all right. This is performance at PGA National the past 5 years. Let's take a look at some specific metrics that we think or know that is going to play well and who's played well or who has done the best at those metrics at PGA National. So your top iron players at PGA National past 5 years: Justin Lauert's just one tournament, Justin Suss just one tournament. There's Gary Woodland, been very, very good with the irons, very good ball striking. He hadn't been terrible with the putter either. Russell Henley, lots of success here. Eric Cole was really good last year. There's Matthew Neesmith, 3 for 3 in making the cut, average finish of a 33rd, pretty solid. Sam Ryder, 3 for 3. Shane Lowry, 4 for 4. Brandon Wu's hit the irons well, but his short game has been atrocious. Ben On, 3 for 4. Sepp Straka, winner 2 years ago, has been really good at basically everything. 4 for 5. Lashley. Wallace, only 2 for 4, but a lot of good finishes. Pick 4 golfers to up no matter the odds. Ooh. I'll tell you what, this is a little bit of foreshadowing, but I really like Matt Fitzpatrick this week. Think Ben Martin can top 20. Ooh, that's a really good one. Ben Martin, now there's a name. Top 5. See, the thing with Ben Martin, like, you just don't expect him to put up 6 on putting week in and week out. Like, this just seems like it was a good putting week. Having said that, I mean, he was good with his approach. He was fine around the green and off the tee, but this, don't get caught up in the fact that he was a top 5. A lot of that was on the putter. I really liked Fitzpatrick this week. He should be in here. I'm gonna have to go to Microsoft or Fantasy National, because he has played the Cognizant or the Honda. Hoagie, interesting. Well, here's another thing with Fitzpatrick. You think about his wins, other than the U.S. Open. Been on Bermuda. Loves Bermuda. RBC Heritage. Very good. Look how good he is when it's difficult. Look how good he is in the wind. This sets up pretty darn well for Fitz. Don't forget, he did top 15, not too long ago. I know the Genesis was bad, but he's also played Honda a couple of times. It wasn't great, but it was a long, long time ago. He's not that same player. I really like Fitzpatrick. I always look at Fitzpatrick when it's difficult, when pars are good scores. I like Fitzpatrick. McNeely, I don't hate. He has been playing much better lately. This is what's going to kill him this week, I think. I know his form's terrible. That's fine. But he also top 15 2 tournaments ago at the Waste Management. People forget that. He missed the cut at the Genesis, but he top 15 the Waste Management. We just saw it. So I'm all about some Fitzpatrick. McNeely's in great form, yes. I do worry about the irons. How's he done at the Honda? 11th, a few years ago. Miscut before that. It's okay. I don't hate it. 4 top 20s for you, Tony. Let me think about that. Let me go through, because I'm gonna lose my train of thought. Let me go through this. Some players might pop up for me. All right. So there's your top iron players. Let's look at the top putters. You're gonna have to putt well here at PGA National. Again, Ben Taylor, just one time. Eric Cole, again one time. Ben Martin. Dylan Wu, 2 for 2, coming off a pretty good Mexico Open. Something to think about. I would not expect him to go gangbusters like he has in 2 tournaments, but 2 is double the sample size of 1, so maybe he just really likes these greens. Lee Hodges, there's Daniel Berger. That's probably somebody that's a good top 20 right there, is Daniel Berger. I know he's coming off injury. He loves this place. You see he's 3 for 3 the past 5 years. Average finish of a top 15. Average finish of a top 15. Berger's probably at fair odds, too, for a top 20 to put in a parlay. Somebody to think about. He just loves this place. Johnny Vegas is putt well here. And these are guys like Cam Champ last week at Mexico. Hideki at the Genesis. When guys are generally not good putters, yet have putt well at a certain course, you got to take notice of that. And Johnny Vegas is not a good putter, but you see, he has played this every single year the past 5 years. He's not missed a cut. He's averaged a 27th place finish. I know that doesn't sound great, but that's an average. So, I mean, he's top 15, perhaps even top 10. But he has averaged gaining 2.5 strokes on the greens here. So you got to take notice of that. Coming off a cut made at Mexico, Johnny Vegas is somebody to think about. For sure. I do worry about McCarthy because of the irons. I know they're getting better, but I still worry about that. I'm definitely going to go Fitzpatrick and Berger in terms of this top 20. Kind of want to take a look at a couple other things here real quick. But there's your top putters the past 5 years at PGA National. I don't want to skip the driving and greens. I'm going to go with good drives gained because I generally go with greens. So let's take a look at good drives gained. I'm on the fence on what I want to do in this page view. But Sam Ryder, gosh dang it, 3 for 3. Henley, very good. Shane Lowry, probably somebody you want to consider very, very strongly for a top 20, considering he's 4 for 4, average finish inside the top 20. That's somebody to think about. Sepp Straka loves this place. You see the good drives gained there. Berger again. Davis Riley only 2 for 2, but he's been good with the good drives gained. Tyler Duncan could be a price who's played well, fairly well here, I would say. This doesn't feel like a good Ryan Palmer course, but he's actually been okay. Moving into scoring, let's take a look at bogey avoidance. Again, bogey avoidance specifically at PGA National the past 5 years. S.H. Kim, Taylor Pendrith 2 for 2. There's Henley again, Lowry, Dylan Wu, Lee Hodges 2 for 2, average finish of 12th. Bud Cauley, Sung Jae, Woodland Gary, yes, of course, that's the same person, you moron. So Gary Woodland, Sepp Straka, Chris Kirk. Got to take off, catch up with the shooting. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Darnell. Really appreciate you jumping in chat and the interaction and stuff. And we're going to see if we can't turn our luck around this week to start the Florida swing. So really appreciate it. Hopefully we'll see you on Wednesday night. There's McNeely, Berger, Palmer. We'll take a look at par 3s and then par 5s because we've been going on quite a bit. So par 3s, Berger, Stallings, Stefan Jaeger 3 for 3. There's Henley, Woodland again. Zadenhout is 2 for 2 here. Decent performance in the par 3s. Keith Mitchell, a previous winner back in 2019. Chris Kirk, Ryan Palmer, Ricky, been okay here. Yes, that's the goal. Especially after a fantastic Genesis Open where, you know, humble brag, I had Hideki at 70-1, you know, and a good DFS week. It kind of came crashing down a little bit last week. We're going to try to turn it around. Lastly here, these par 5s, 500 to 550. Higo, Keith Mitchell. Svensson's been okay here. 3 for 3. Riley, Horschel. Luke List has played the par 5s well, but you see he's 0 for 3 with a average finish outside of 90th. So no thanks. Sung Jae, Mark Hubbard, Poston, Straka. All right, let me sort on this finish. Definitely have 3 names for you. I have to think about the 4th real quick. Tony, So average finish, smallest to largest. Definitely going to put Berger and Lowry into this. Vegas could be interesting because I imagine he's probably a pretty good price. But I think these two, for sure, you would want to consider quite heavily. Sepp Straka makes a whole lot of sense as well. He's just played extremely well here at PGA National. And you see the ball striking, and he's not a ball striker per se. He's much more of a putter and short game. But if we look at Straka, like he loves this place. He really does. The form is okay. Gosh dang it! I need to change the view for you. Kind of middling off the tee, which is fine. The irons are hot and cold, so you got kind of hope for a hot week. But top 15 of the century, pretty much top 25 Pebble Beach. I don't hate Straka. Again, the wind, difficult. He hadn't been the best on Bermuda, but so let's go with Berger, Lowry, Sepp Straka, and like I said, I'm just really hung on Fitzpatrick. So that's going to be the 4-player parlay that I'll say on a Monday night. And I could change based on what the mixed condition model spits out come Wednesday, but probably not going to be a very high paying top 20 parlay. But I think those are 4 solid candidates to be there come Sunday. But that's going to be it for the show tonight. I appreciate Tony, P, and Darnell for jumping in chat. I really appreciate it. It was a fun show, all the interaction. Quick reminder, the DFS Tactics show will in fact be at 9 p.m. on Wednesday. We are finally done with the 10 p.m. Nonsense. So the DFS Tactics show will now be at 9 p.m. again. And if you have not seen the research that I posted over on social media, I ask that you go look that up. Not a lot of a pattern for the past 8 champions here at PGA National because it's a pretty volatile course with all the water. But did give you a couple of patterns of former winners and the players who fit that criteria in the field this week. So thanks again for all of the interaction and chat, for you 3 jumping in there. Thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. It's much appreciated. Love what I do. Taking in-depth look at sports statistics from a statistician and data analyst's perspective, trying to help us all win a little money in the process. So hopefully we'll see you Wednesday night for the DFS Tactics show for all the wagers you've made so far for the Cognizant Classic, for all the wagers you're thinking about making this week for the Cognizant Classic. And until I see you at the normal time of 9 p.m. for the DFS Tactics show, may all your bets be profitable.